Hello everyone, welcome to my 1cc commentary and review of Sin and Punishment, the most underrated N64 game of all time. For those who aren't familiar with it, I don't blame you, but I'm also happy to introduce it to you. Sin and Punishment is a 3D rail shooter created by Treasure, the same company that created Radiant Silvergun, Ikaruga, Gunstar Heroes, and so many other creative games. And as famous as this company is for their shooters and for its other various platformers, I actually think the Sin and Punishment series is my favorite Treasure creation. Both this game and its sequel on the Nintendo Wii, which is Sin and Punishment Star's successor, which I think is also the best Wii game, one of the most underrated Wii games by far. And so in this video, you're probably wondering, what is going on here? What am I looking at? Well, I am trying to solve an essential YouTube problem that I've been running up against, and if you end up seeing this format adopted in the future, just know you saw it here first. So what this is you're seeing a split of actually the same run. So on the left is the first half of the run, and on the right is the second half of the run. And the reason why I've done this is because most people, according to YouTube analytics, thanks for the information YouTube, do not like to sit through a lot of my 45-minute, 1cc commentary videos. They prefer a little bit shorter, condensed games. But in my opinion, I was like, well, I love Sin and Punishment. I want to show people this game. I want people to check it out. How can I do that in a way that's more convenient and interesting without necessarily chopping up the gameplay too much? Because, a lot of popular YouTube videos about games, they just chop up the gameplay and you just see little clips. And the thing about it is, this is an actual legitimate 1cc, so I didn't want to chop out the gameplay, obviously, but I wanted to condense it down somehow. So let me know what you think of this format. I'm pretty stoked on it, and I wouldn't be too surprised if I start doing it more often, I guess depending on how you all enjoy it. I don't think the smaller screen size is that big of a deal, especially since it's a 4x3 game. And it also kind of gives you something to watch when there's a little bit of downtime between the different sections of the game and stuff like that. I found myself enjoying it. So anyway, that's what you're looking at. So the thing you're also looking at the bottom here is me playing Sin and Punishment on an arcade stick. Now this is a 3D rail shooter, and its controls are similar to Star Fox 64, but actually maybe a little bit more complicated, where you move left and right with the L and R button, and then you free aim the cursor with your arcade stick, your analog stick. And if you've seen my previous video, I have a title card for it here. I actually have an analog arcade stick that I think is really awesome, and if you're into 3D rail shooter type games or N64 games and you're a stick player, I definitely recommend getting it. The interesting thing about it is, since this game has sort of movement with the L and R button, it kind of reminded me a little bit of playing on keyboard, because I had to move with the buttons and then free aim, then also shoot. Once you got used to it though, it actually is a very intuitive control system, and I think I played very well, and look forward to trying out Star's successor with this control scheme as well, which might be simpler or might be more complicated. We'll find out. But yeah, let's talk about the second stage here. So second stage, I think, is one of the coolest looking stages in the game. That's here on the left. I love this city, and I love just the graphics of this game. I have to point that as well. This is an N64 game, but man, does it look beautiful. And maybe it's just my subjective eye, but I've been talking about this in previous videos, and I guess this might be a little bit of a controversial outlook, but maybe more people are starting to agree. I don't think the average YouTube reviewer is, based on people's commentary on Mario 64 recently. But I really like N64 era graphics and PS1 era graphics a lot. Actually, in many cases more than PS2 era graphics, because I like that hard-edged polygon look a lot, rather than sort of generic, hard to describe, like generic sort of Pixar-looking graphics. Some games on the PS2 are absolutely beautiful and look way better. But some, a lot of PS2 games, to me, look pretty just generic and boring. You can even get that with modern releases and stuff like that too, like the new Samurai Jack game. Whereas a lot of these games they have a really distinct style and feel, and I think they look pretty good, especially when you emulate them and you get really clean visuals, you know, not all that N64 mud. The one thing about the N64 that I find really funny is, you know, there's a real movement in retro gaming for modifying consoles to look better, like RGB mods and all that kind of thing. And I actually do a little bit of that with my consoles, like my Saturn and my PS2 and that type of stuff, when they're really straightforward. But I feel like with the N64, everyone's throwing their kitchen sink at trying to make this console look okay. But I personally think the hardware itself is just subpar, and I really don't see... Like, I own N64 games. I own Sin and Punishment on cartridge. N64 games usually aren't that hard to get a hold of, and I have a massive collection of them. And I do play on the hardware from time to time, but I actually prefer emulating them even still, just because the emulator can do things that are just beyond the console. You can do really expensive HDMI mods, and I still think it can't quite compare. But that's just me, and I know that's a little bit of an outlier opinion, especially among retro gamers. So what's really cool about Sin and Punishment is it reminds me of like a 3D Metal Slug in a way, where you have your free aiming and your shooting, but you also have melee attack with your sword. And once you realize how to use the sword properly, the game becomes a lot more accessible. Like in this section here, what you do is you just hit fire again rather than holding fire. So if you hold fire, you auto fire your gun. But if you hit fire and something's near you, you activate your sword, just like in Metal Slug where you activate your knife and that sort of thing. And so being able to time that is really important, and understanding that it exists is going to help you out a lot. And also you can time it to reflect bullets, and it has a cool lock-on mechanic in the game where if you lock onto an enemy, either manually or automatically, I guess I should explain that as well. So most of the time when you see me playing, you'll see that my cursor is red. That is manual aim, so I'm manually aiming. The advantage of manual aim is it gives you a little bit more fine-tuned control when you're having to fight like lots of smaller enemies, and usually that's the way to go. And it also does more damage. So for the most part, manual aiming is just better. But if you look at the right here, you'll see now I'm locking on. So with boss fights and certain larger enemies where you need to do a lot of strafing and moving around and stuff like that, that's where the lock-on really comes into play. So the nice thing about the lock-on is once it's on there, you just have to... Now you can focus on moving and that sort of thing. The drawback is it does less damage than the manual. So it's a nice balance, simple and elegantly solved. Treasure is really good at that, by the way, just as across the board. Treasure is really talented at creating unique mechanics or interesting mechanics and interesting games, and nailing how to implement them and how to balance them. Think of Ikaruga, right? They pretty much got that right off the bat. Same thing with Radiant Silvergun and all the weapon systems. Sin and Punishment, as you can see here. It's just Treasure, they really were... I don't know, do Treasure still make games? I don't think they do, right? But they really were a brilliant, brilliant studio. And I really wish more... The only studio that I can kind of compare to them is Platinum. I think Platinum is the kind of closest comparison to Treasure in today's sort of a landscape, as far as making unique mechanic games that are more action-oriented and that sort of thing. Now, if I was a really good commentator, I'd probably look up and see if there's like staff crossover between the studios, because I would be surprised if there wasn't, to be honest. But even still, I think, yeah, Treasure's games are absolutely awesome. And I think the Sin and Punishment series, as I mentioned earlier in the video, is insanely underrated. Like, way... People talk about hidden gems, and there are a lot of really great hidden gems, but if there is a true hidden gem out there, the Sin and Punishment series is definitely it. One thing that I also want to comment on, and you'll see more of it as we get further in the replay here, is I think Sin and Punishment is, especially the 64 version here, rather than the sequel, has a lot of elements that are clearly homaging Evangelion. And I make that reference because I remember watching Evangelion for the first time, actually, was it late last year, earlier this year, and really digging the anime a lot. I like it a lot. And one thing, my first thing that came to my mind, you know, being a gamer is, oh, did they make any sick Evangelion games? You know, that seems like that could be a thing. And I looked, and it didn't really seem like there are any good ones, for the most part. So, I feel like if you're looking for an awesome Evangelion game, Sin and Punishment, this is the way to go. This is the closest you're gonna get, because you do like playing a mech, and it has a lot of, I think, a lot of homages to Evangelion, or a lot of influence and crossover, and it's a badass aesthetic. My favorite N64 game aesthetic-wise, absolutely. I love the way this game looks. Besides maybe something like Harvest Moon 64, if that even counts, but. Yeah, this game looks well, I like a lot of N64 aesthetics, to be honest, though. So, you know, that's a big compliment, because I also like Ocarina of Time a lot, and the way it looks. Really polished visuals, though. One thing about Sin and Punishment that will forever confuse me, or I guess the answer is probably pretty straightforward, but... So, if you'll notice while I'm playing, this is actually a Japanese region game. It is not a American region game, at least the ROM I'm playing. There might be an American release. But what's funny about it is that it's dubbed in English. So it's like, besides the like score transition stuff and like that, it's basically like playing an English game. I guess the subtitles are in Japanese, but the voiceover is in English and everything, so it's super accessible. See, like, look on the left here. Like, you're basically playing as an Evangelion right there. Right? Isn't that Eva, I guess, is what they're called? And then there's just a lot of sections in the game too that feel like they're definitely homaging that anime, which I appreciate, because that anime deserves homage. Absolutely. Really, really fun game. This little boss rush here is actually pretty challenging, one of the more challenging sections. And then coming up ahead here on the right is a pretty challenging mid-boss too. I don't think I ever quite totally solved how to no-hit this boss, but I got well enough at it to where I could, you know, not take too much damage. So basically you got to take out those the tentacles and then slice them up nice and good with your sword. But you got to watch out, because he'll blast you in the face with ink, and it's kind of got a really weird wind-up animation. This is actually not a very good fight on my part. I've had much cleaner ones, but you know, I made it work, and that's all that counts, right? That's all that matters sometimes. On the left here, this boss fight, this mid-boss fight I should say, took me a while to solve how to do, but once you solve it, it's actually really easy. But the first time you play the game, if you don't know how to do it, you will lose. You will basically time out, because you're not going to damage him by shooting him. What you have to do is you have to auto-lock on with him, and then shoot those, and then hit those bomb missile things into him. And then once he does this, you have to just jump and slice him as he runs by. Again, it's not that hard once you know what to do, but if you don't know what to do, you'll probably lose by timing out. That happened to me quite a few times. So to get this 1cc, I remember it took me... I played Sin and Punishment in the past too, so this isn't totally fair hour estimate, but I basically played it for, I think, 4 or 5 hours using save states and just kind of practicing the sections. And then when I sat down to do the run, I had one failed run, and then I got the 1cc. So I probably got this 1cc in a course of like 8 hours or something like that in total. But the thing about it too is I have a lot of experience playing rail shooters, especially like Star Fox 64. And actually like a lot of shmup tactics crossover too. That's why I really do think people should take rail shooters more seriously as far as being in the shmup family, because a lot of the stuff you learn in shmups and run and guns crosses over pretty directly into rail shooters, especially this game. Like I said, like the Metal Slug style slashing of enemies when they get close. The way you sort of handle the different bullet patterns and route out the enemies and everything. All of that is really similar. This mid-boss was what killed me. I was talking about the one failed run. That one failed one was on this mid-boss. And that's because basically you don't want to focus on the little spiders too much. You're going to get wrecked if you do that, because he starts spawning some really nasty ones. So instead what you do is you just kind of dodge them and then take out the boss. Just focus on him. This is the most bizarre boss fight I have seen, like aesthetically. Aesthetically, the boss is in a trash can, and you just hit missiles at him. And that's the fight. Very, very strange. And very easy, too. I don't know why. I guess that spider is the real boss fight, because the part where you fight him in the garbage can is ridiculously easy. So yeah, that's beyond me. Okay, here we go. This stage is the final stage, by far the hardest stage, like without contest. And also the strangest, because now I am not auto-scrolling. It looks like it, but I actually have to hold strafe to move. So it took me, this is what took me the most time and most practice to understand. I had a good solid hour or two of save state practice on just this stage. Mostly because I'm trying to wrap my head around the new movement mechanic, which is actually pretty challenging to use. But I found out the way I route it is basically just run through the whole stage, roll through this guy, and just keep running. So just hold the strafe button. So then it sort of auto-scrolls. But then the game messes with you because there's certain sections where you need to stop auto-scrolling. Otherwise you'll run into attacks. Also need to... Oh, by the way, I should mention too, the game has a double jump. Again, a really, really helpful feature. And just wanted to let you know in case you don't realize that there is a double jump, and use it because it's very, very good and very useful. This boss fight here on the left in stage 3 is... I think this is stage 3, right? Yeah, this boss fight's another strange one. You have to kill the cat. And then once you kill the cat, you have to do this sword fight with the guy. And I struggled on this boss for a little bit because I thought you had to like time your slices and like parry the sword attack here. But no, the way to beat him is just mash. Just mash attack and you'll beat him. So once you understand that, it's actually a really easy boss fight, but until you understand that, you're gonna get killed in the sword fight. This bit here is really challenging. You have to slice them at the tail. You also have to move around at a pretty quick pace because you can time out pretty easily. On the left too, I'm going into stage 4. Stage 4 is awesome aesthetically. You fly around on this platform and shoot stuff. Extremely anime in the best way. Watch this up here. So that's the part where you have to stop. So coming up here, this section looks pretty straightforward, but it's not. I'm talking about on the right here. Oh, okay, well, we'll get to this section in a second. On the left, I'm reflecting missiles using the manual aim. I think the game more intends you to use the auto aim because it's a lot better, but I was being stubborn and using manual aim. And there's certain sections where helicopters spawn, and the only way to kill them is to reflect missiles at them. But anyway, on the right here, this flying enemy here, you have to speed kill them, otherwise the run is over. This is probably the hardest part of the entire game, right here. These guys, because it doesn't look it, but if you don't speed kill those guys, you're dead. Because those green bullets are basically super hard to dodge. And look how low my health is. And they do an insane amount of damage. So when I was first playing, I was like, okay, how are you supposed to clear this section? Then I realized you just have to be fast on the gun and speed kill. That's the only way. So this is the most dangerous point of the run for me. I'm very close to death. And I'm about to come into a really tricky mid-boss fight, which will be the determination of do I clear the game or not. So this bit here is good. Reflecting the sword is critical. Speed killing these guys is critical. Got them. And here we go. We're about to go into the mid-boss section. We shoot these hives. And then this guy spawns. This guy, you've got to do damage to him. Save states are required to practice this. You got to do a ton of damage to him. But, see this attack? You have to roll through it. The timing's a little trickier than it looks, and if it hits me, I die. So I nailed those 2 rolls. And then I had to slice the crap out of him before it's too late, so I have enough health to get through this next section here. Reflect the sword. So this part's... The only hard part about this part, really, is you gotta speed kill these guys, otherwise you're dead. So the game wants to distract you with all these other enemies. Don't worry about them. Just speed kill those guys before they shoot you. Once they get low and start firing, it's over, you're dead. Especially with 3 of them going. By the way, the story of this game makes no sense to me at all, even though it is in English. And I have no idea what's going on in the story. But here we go. Now we're about to switch over to the single view mode and fight the final boss. Look at me in the camera on the bottom right. I'm like celebrating. I kind of missed it a little bit, but yeah, I was really happy because I'm pretty good at the final boss. So I knew, okay, I got this in the bag now after getting to that stage. So this is very Evangelion. So the idea here with this boss fight is actually pretty simple, but it took me a bit to understand exactly the meta here. All you have to do is you have to, it's like not Space Invader, I can't remember the game, but you have to defend the I think it's Space Invaders, actually. That's the game. It's Space Invaders, where you have to defend Earth from getting hit. You're standing on Earth and destroy this evil Earth planet mirror thing. So the green little bullets, there's a lot of them. You can reflect them if they get close, but try not to do that too much because you end up missing them more than you hit them. They do the least amount of damage. So, I mean, obviously you want to take them out, but there's going to become certain parts in the fight where it's going to try and distract you with green bullets and then hit you with the meteors like this. The meteors do way more damage. They're way more important. You cannot let a meteor hit the planet. This bit here is actually really simple. You just reflect them. I think I got almost all of them. Speed kill those. This here I just have to memorize. You can't get them all. It's like one of those things where if you try to get them all, maybe someone who's really good can get them all, but basically the idea is if you try and get them all, you'll get none of them. So you have to just choose the ones you get and take the hit on the other ones. Again, with this one here, whenever there's meteors, take out the meteors immediately before you worry about the greens. I am doing extremely well though. Look at my health versus the enemy planet's health. Doing really, really well. So this is what the video originally looks like, the original stream looked like. I remember I streamed this, shame on all of you. I had like 1 viewer or something like that. I was like, okay, no one is really available right now, or no one really cares that much about this game. But I'm hoping this video can win some of you guys over, and definitely check it out because you won't regret it. It's absolutely phenomenal. And keep an eye out because I'll be reviewing the sequel and playing the sequel as well. The sequel is more challenging than this one, but it's probably the better game overall. But even look, okay, so there's the Evangelion. Yeah, right? Doesn't it look exactly like one? And then look at the credits and stuff. It just reminds me so much of that show. I love how there's an English translation credit. And the only thing that's translated is the credits themselves, so that's funny. It's like, great job translating the credits, homie. I think that's a solid score. I don't know the scoring lore of this game, but I think that's solid enough. Anyway, thanks everyone for tuning in, and let me end this video by thanking my patrons. So thank you to Dingo, Andy Capt, Anthony A, Ben Win, Corio, Eric H, Full Set, Retro Schmupper, Hausu, Kiwi, JBRPG, Joe Angelo, Gameboy Guru, K, Malaise, Mark Toms, Martin Worrell, Maz, Mayhair Calendrian, Queen Charlene, Nathaniel Davis, N Electron, Okla Kugel, Smacky Factor, Sugumo, Plasmo, and Utakaya. Thanks for watching.